Hello everyone. I would like to talk about today the beauty in clouds and how your recognition of how a cloud looks like a face to you opens new dimensions in your mind. You see, you're always engaging with some form of reality, and so that's the world you're looking out at. And in other words, when you observe external reality, you wonder how much you're here and how much you're somewhere else. If your knowing is only from this dimension, state of perception, or could there be more to you in the unknown? And when man sits down to compassionately look at how reality is placed and shaped, he finds that it's as if the winds of time are, in a sense, moving space in ways where space could not visualize itself, regardless of how much it had an identification with a sense of self or a sense of being. Once you are given a sense of insight within yourself, you will see that that same ability you had in seeing how a cloud could look like a face is immediately on some subtle level happening on many other things. So every face you're looking at, it's reminding you of other faces. You're seeing more pictures because the observer is at a much instant state of being compared to the object of observance, which is in its own temporal range of, let's say, attention and alertness. So when we hear the noise of other men's intentions, we simply see that you are an interpreter that is constantly interpreting your interpretation. And so because you see it so constant, because that's simply what's being expressed, you are no longer an interpreter because it's being naturally done. So you may assume that you are maintaining your heart, but your heart is simply beating naturally. So it's as if nature's intelligence is within you. Then you conceive your intelligence out of nature's intelligence. So the awareness to nature's intelligence has been lost, and that's why it's not very easy for many people to simply allow reality to present itself. So simply that moment when you were sitting on the grass and you saw a face suddenly, that was nobody else's face, but was just a face, an expression in the clouds, you saw how you could take some image and extract a value more than its immediate value. So man is really actually, his sense of spirituality is actually being done through his terminology. So we're constantly looking at words and using words in new ways. So in other words, it can't be only in one way, because that one way is in a spectrum and you cannot avoid other parts of the spectrum. So because we cannot see it, we cannot say we can know the totality through our language. Our technology, if it is in a sense how would I say this? If our technology originated from this plane, it would let you go. But if your technology is from another plane, so in other words, once you see hindrance in where you're going, that should immediately be utilized as momentum towards where you really know you're going. So we find at times that man's vision shifts by his attention and concentration to what he's looking at. So depth becomes actually very deep principles of concentration, which meditation has, in a sense, dawned on us, in a sense given to us as a new dawn. Because you see, when a man recognizes that, or when a being recognizes the ability to concentrate and in a sense to look at something so deeply that you can become it, you realize that man he thinks he's limited by his fantasy and sci-fi. Guys, the way you treat information, if it's still temporal, you are playing your own game. It is only when you can become aware of a state of being that is not, in a sense, a game, that you see you are part of a greater cycle of existence, a greater involvement. So transcendence and multidimensional awareness is actually, imagine a bunch of cycles within one another, constantly cycling, and you simply see that your attention can move from different bodies. And so man thought his greatest engines were to be built by his hands, but no. Because man's mind is the receiver of all that is. It's the receiver of existence, is the receiver of the universe that is allowed to be seen. So do not ignore yourself. Do not play games with yourself by saying, I have this power, I'm trying to do this. Those are stories. Immediately, in an instant, remember who you are. Go back to your memory. You have instant moments where you felt good, and that emotion is there, that clarity is there. And simply stand in the terrace of a very comfortable memory and observe reality, and in an instant you will know it. You will realize we are multidimensional beings because we are beyond our own conception, because our intelligence, in a sense, is not individual, it's collective. And there's a beauty when you see birds fly together. There's a beauty when you see that you have certain thoughts throughout the day and suddenly you see their manifestation and you observe what is even promoting this greater sense of action. And so it is the quality of your sight that you are by self-awareness transcending. That is simply it. And by recognizing that there is this other dimension of self-awareness, of state of being, you become sensitive to life. You're like, okay, I'm not going to keep eating the same crappy food, for example, right? You got to make an intent. So what that means is that many people, when their ambition comes, they're open to it. So they're like, oh yeah, I want to be that kind of hero. I want to be this kind of person. However, the way you get to that is by not for a moment wanting to be something so much, but actually to study the reality of your greatest table where you're going to do your greatest work in this plane. What that means is an aspect of you must trust existence to such an intuitive and innate level that when it looks around, it is always seeing itself. And so it's this beautiful understanding that the ideology that we create to separate others is simply the ideology that will unify us. When we see that the light was only to the term, because after the term, there is nothing. So we are social creatures. We are human beings. But there's an aspect of our being which now is the time, and Mr.Within suggests very compassionately and in a very mighty way that it is time. We must explore man's inner dimensions. And we must explore them more than ideology. Because the problem with religion and science is that they're covered in ideology. So where is direct experience when you're not there and you're not sure where you are? Direct experience must begin in you, in a sense, acknowledging your plane of existence to such a degree that you have become the silence among all the noise. You have become the stillness among the movement. You have not just taken the idea of patience as a virtue to such a high level, but you are understanding that the nature of being is virtuous in its existential allowance. So when you allow yourself, when you have done all movement to tire down and sit by a tree, the clarity that will find you is the clarity of everything. It is nature's rhythm. You learn from your heartbeat much more than an external reality which you're conceiving to be you, but in a sense isn't, and any turbulence shakes you. The pilots of consciousness, the next advanced communicators that are rising, so in other words, they're sprouting, and you know who you are. You will gravitate towards understanding reality at not based on an advanced level. So in other words, when I say advanced communicator, the pilot of consciousness knows it's not advanced as in like, oh, it's so much better than how we're talking now. No. It's a level of concentration and maintenance of your plane of existence, of what you are perceiving, that you do not become just the light that is present through infinite holograms, but you begin to remember how your intelligence moves, how the collective knows how to walk. And so you have existed beyond the conception that is telling you there is non-existence. You are forgetting the fact that words are blinding you. And when the word was empty, you are your own mirror. And you will see that perhaps the faces in the cloud are smiling differently, and that you're no longer seeing a face, but you're no longer, in a sense, wanting to see a face. You're absorbed, and so the clouds are clouds, the sky is the sky, the grass is the grass, and man was never blind. Learn to caress your reality. Learn to not just love every individual thing or concept or idea or focus point in your reality, but learn to love your whole plane of existence. So those people who feel compassion, who wonder where the peak of compassion is, you do not just love people, but you love all existence. This is what those mystics perhaps understood when they went to the Himalayas and in the caves of both mountains and their mind. They recognized that their appreciation and gratefulness for life would immediately gravitate them to their knowing. And so the great work begins when you find your table in the present moment, where you're like, no, nothing begins in the future. Nothing has begun in the past. It is all now, because when I take my step, new worlds are going to open. And these worlds are not the same worlds. These worlds are simply how your mind is becoming so self-aware of its physical form and of all forms and of all subtle realities that it is innately becoming the collective intelligence to handle it. So many people think that you have to go to a master and go do meditation and stuff like that. No, it's a sensitivity to your existence. How integrated do you find yourself in your environment? There's a level of compassion. So let's say if tomorrow you woke up and you just decided for, just for one day, let's say for one day, to just be an extremely kind person. What that means is that every moment you're giving. You're giving. And it's not just let's say giving, let's say nothing more. You're not thinking about what to give or whatever. I don't want to go that far. Just let's say you're giving. You would see that your openness, which comes from giving, is giving you a boost in being more involved in your environment. You're not just survival of the fittest does not mean just take. Because once the fittest are the fittest, then they must make sure everyone else can be fit too. But not in a way where animals are lost in their own Hunger Games. It's not like that. I don't want to take imagery of the old too much, because it is not the color we need. The present moment is the treasure revealer's gift. It is where the treasure revealer finds his treasure. It is where you meet your greatest self. So cultivate an understanding of your present moment. Understand there's simple ways of looking at life that can serve you. In other words, simplify things down by knowing that you have an ability to confront the complex. So, for example, think of how simple it becomes after you've skydived, after you've gone through that experience. Afterwards, you're like, it was so simple. Gosh. So your reality is constantly wondrous about where it's going next. And that is when the moment becomes more interesting than any other moment of imagery or conception. What is here at your table? So when you open your eyes, that existence, that moment, this moment that you're hearing these sounds, you're present, your life. So it's very vast. You suddenly realize that, and it was very funny for me because I kind of noticed it in trees at first, but I was not convinced. So I would wonder, what is this life in a tree? It's not like moving. As a kid, of course, before I went to school, just that wonder of just, why is it this? And I noticed it is so wise because it is in a state of stillness. So the trees are observing man's mistakes more than man is observing his own mistakes, because the trees are still. And so if man cultivates stillness, if you become a still and just able and healthy, efficient expression of existence in your environment, you will heal the planet. Not in a way that you're healing someone else's planet or your planet. You're just being a good expression. I want you to think like this, that if suddenly that face in the clouds was actually an eye in the sky who came down, there was a presence that came down and you acknowledged it, or in a sense a presence that was just looking, you would see, they would be wondering, not just like, oh, how cool is this guy? How cool is this guy? They would be like, how clear and exactly are these guys aware of energy? Not how much they have read about energy, studied energy, but experientially, through direct experience, aware of the alchemy of existence. Because that is the clarity that is of the advanced communicators. That means some men will be born, and these men will, in a sense, not be anyone to anyone. They will be planes of their existence. They will walk in one eye chaos and in one eye order, and they will smile because they are not limited. They are here to be pillars of navigation. That is the pilot of consciousness. Because when the plane is also evolving, there are greater intermediaries sent to guide the plane. So you will see that these pilots of consciousness are not here and are irrelevant. It's as if certain aspects of karma never touches them. But they are here to be pillars of existence. They're here to know who they are. And in that knowing, they are the act of a greater cycle. And so they will feel as if their whole time being here is very irrelevant. Like they understand how much they can get involved in their environment, but in a sense, they will also learn that some aspects of reality must be untouched. What that means is that many people who are very aware and they know it within themselves, even though not expressing it in their personality, in their trust of intuition, will recognize exactly what is meant by nothing. And so that innate knowing will be, in a sense, your initiation into a greater sense of purpose, because now you have a greater awareness of movement to your still being. So, to continue, the pilot of consciousness, the advanced communicator, these people are not just people. You look at them, you will see existence. You will literally see your plane of existence. And they are here not to work mainly with external realities, but to immediately get activated by, in a sense, acknowledging their direct reality and, in a sense, just being and following the flow of where they feel they must go. In other words, feelings become like more clear companions, and thoughts no longer disturb. In other words, thoughts was just nature's way of keeping you in the cocoon. But once you get out of the cocoon, once you see existence beyond the thought, then you will see the wings that you have are of a greater design. There's a greater dimension of color. So what that means is that think of the cocoon, if it used to think and it wanted to know what it could be, and it could never conceive it, because it's a new dimension of existential allowance for intelligence to be expressed in such a way. And so you must acknowledge through any individual moment the collective awareness that is all existence. And there's at times a bliss when this bubble of presence, which at first you think it's your personality, but then realize there's something greater standing there, you know. You dissolve into an embrace where clarification becomes the moment's way of giving you the greatest work to do. So in a sense, you tune yourself with the clarity of the whole, of the collective. And that means a complete compassion and trust, not in all these shades, not in just only people, but in all of existence. You trust your plane of reality, and so there's a clarity in a sense of subtler co-creation in your mind to guide you towards your greater vision. Within the eyes of every man, a great designer is not waiting, but is working silently, and is simply just, it knows that it's just waiting for you to find it, you know? It knows that once you find this aspect of yourself that has been observing your whole existence from the origin of your awareness, its ability is immense. And it is your ability. It's a sense of confrontation of life that is not limited to spectrum or spectra. And remember, once the clouds fade, It is time to see the limitless sky. Much blessings and namaste.